Welcome, welcome. We are here live today, and I'm Tony Bodoh, of course. And today I've got with me Vinny Ribas, and we are on our initial episode of CEO Secrets, and we're bringing this to you live here. So, just to give you a little background, a lot of you know a little bit about me. We can talk more about that, or things will come out during the show, I'm sure. But let me introduce you briefly to Vinny Ribas. Vinny is my business partner in a number of different areas. We've done a lot of things together.
It's getting bigger and bigger.
Exactly. It keeps growing. It's become a beast. But no, we do a lot of things together, and we've got a couple companies that we have co-created, co-founded. And 2016, we ended up, I think we've been doing actually in business together since like 2013. 2016, we wrote Leverage, Achieve a Lot with the Little You've Got. And that was instantaneously a #1 bestseller on Amazon on like 21 lists or something like that. We just actually yesterday, if I remember correctly, was the anniversary, the 4th anniversary of us getting #1 on that list. So, it was a cool experience to do that with Vinny and his wife, Connie. But Vinny has coached thousands of CEOs and business owners. He's been doing this for years. We actually connected over, he was doing some coaching for me and I was doing some coaching for him, kind of consulting in different areas. And we just really grown to respect and appreciate what he brings to the table. So what we are going to talk about today actually is something that comes out of the book Leverage that we wrote together. And it's about how do you achieve a lot with the little you've got in today's world. People are struggling to know what they can do. They're trying to figure out, how do I keep my business going? How do I keep it afloat? They're not even asking the question about thriving. So, it's something that people want to know, what can they do? And so, Vinny, I'm going to hand it over to you for a minute to talk a little bit about, kind of your experience, like what you've seen in the past, in, past downturns and things like that, and how companies struggled and how leaders struggled, and kind of where that brought us to this point of the asset inventory list.
Well, and thank you, Tony. I appreciate that. And that was a great introduction. I think that we are obviously in a very unique time right now, and it's different from other downturns, because in a lot of ways people are paralyzed. They can't open their businesses. They can't do this. I work, as you know, I work a lot with musicians. I manage 2 artists. I coach 10 artists. And it's really frustrating when your venues shut down. And one of the things that I've been preaching for years, you and I have been preaching years to business owners, and I've been preaching to artists, is that they need to create some kind of mailbox money, something that's going to be there when their main income, their gigs, whether it's a business or being a musician, when that dries up. It was harder to do in the past, but nowadays with everything that's online, it makes a world of difference. And if people start thinking about what they actually have, and this is what we're going to go into, and the things that they actually have, most of the time they don't even realize they have them. They've never thought about it, but they have value to somebody, and it's something that they can leverage and create value for themselves with. And I think more and more, because everybody has moved online, this is exactly what's happening. We're in some ways, we're getting deluged with stuff online, but at the same time, there's so many opportunities for people to do things now and to leverage what they've got. So in the past, it was work harder, take a side job and everything like that. When there's no side jobs to be had, you have to get out of that mind frame of trading hours for dollars completely, and starting to do something that's going to create an ongoing income. At least that's my perspective.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting perspective and a valuable one, because as I look at it, we've never been in a situation like we are today, at least in my lifetime. I've been through several, downturns in the economy now. And we've never had the jobs like, the pizza delivery jobs and the serving jobs go away like they did. And they're still not fully back, because most restaurants are 25 or 50% capacity. So they don't need the servers. They're only hiring the best of the best. So there's a lack, if you will, of ways to do that. So let's dive a little bit deeper into this idea, because when people say, oh gosh, you guys are talking about asset inventory, that's kind of a boring thing. And so let's just clarify. The asset inventory, as boring as the name is, it's not an accounting document, right? It's not something that where you just list, here are all the assets I've got in my business, here's what they're worth, and here's what to do with it, right? This is something deeper. This is probably, I would tell you that when I went through this exercise with Vinny years ago, and I go back to it, I mean, I use this exercise quite frequently, maybe not in as depth as we could talk about it here, but I do use it frequently. I just got off a call, in fact, where I was using the same concept and methodology with a nonprofit. But the asset inventory is really the foundation of creativity for what you can do to generate new income, new revenue streams in your business. And so it's not this accounting document. I just want to reassure everyone that it's actually a form of creativity. So tell us a little bit more from your perspective, Vinny. What do you like about the asset inventory list, and kind of give people an idea of what it is, maybe?
Well, the asset inventory list is, in a sense, it is a document of what is it that I have. Either I have internally or I have externally, but it's not just tangible things. That is actually 20% of it. It also covers things like, who do I know? What are the relationships that I have? What ideas do I have that we can leverage? What kind of intellectual property do I have? You know, I've been writing blogs for forever. Can I turn them into a book? You know, what do I have that's totally intangible that most people don't even think about as an asset, like my relationships? Well, even more than that, my reputation. How do you leverage that? So it is about really self-awareness, awareness of yourself and your business and all the things that you really do have, and being able to then put those together to be able to create things of value, whether it's a barter for something, or you're actually creating a business, or you're creating new content, or you're taking content that you have and you're putting it together and repackaging it. I mean, there's so many ways to do it, but I think so many people get stuck in the idea that this is what I do to make a living. This is where I'm at. This is my identity. And they don't look at all the things that they actually have, whether it's even just the knowledge that they have, the experience that they have. How can they leverage those things when their traditional job situation is not existing right now? So that's what it's about. It's about really being self-aware of yourself and your business and all the things that either have value to you or can bring value to somebody else, either alone or in combination with each other.
And that's, I think, a really important part of this is like, it's about getting things on a list so you can actually look at them and see them and know what's there. And then it's, how do you creatively start bringing pieces of it together to do something brand new? And how do I look at it and say, oh, I'm missing this piece, but if I had this, look what I could do over here with all the pieces I already do have in place. And I'm thinking back, I've got a couple clients that I'll refer to here. One of them is a company that it's a yoga studio. And of course, so when COVID-19 hits and they have to shut down, they don't have a choice there. They're like, well, what do we do? And so we went through this whole asset inventory list. What kind of software do you have out there? What type of intellectual property do you have? How can you create, can you create online courses? Can you go live online? And they restructured, they canceled some software packages they had that they didn't need anymore. And they turned around and bought a new one, or, subscribed to a new one, so they could be online delivering classes, in person, or, if you will, live, and on demand. And so they shifted their business. Then we start looking at, okay, what are some other things that your clients need, right? And that's kind of, if we're talking about like ideas, right? Well, we heard our clients have talked about needing this, or they need this, or we're hearing this. And so that just continues. So we've been in this process for about 2 months now of creating the initial stream of revenue so they can at least keep their doors open, if you will. Now it's like, okay, well, we can only fit 5 people in the studio at the same time because of the restrictions around it. So, oh, well, we can go use a park. There's a park next door. We can go get 10 people in our classes if we do it outdoors in the park, or we can do this over here. So it's all about how to take what you might be able to see around you and leverage it creatively. And so I know you've had examples where you've been working with clients and you've done the same thing. So give us an example where you've used this type of list for success.
Well, it runs the gamut. I mean, it's a matter of, like, as an artist manager, my job is to find all the contacts and resources to build a team around an artist. So all I'm doing is leveraging, who do I know that knows this person? I don't have a direct contact there, but somebody I do knows that person. I'm going to ask for an introduction. It's, I live on LinkedIn for that reason. And so there's a lot of ways to leverage relationships, and we've done that a million times. But there's also a matter of, like, what organizations do I belong to? So when I'm working with a business and they're trying to market something, it's like, okay, who would really love what you're doing? And what organizations do you belong to? What organizations do you know about, or that we can find that you can join? That's another way of leveraging. I know of one business, well, a perfect example that is all over the place, or has been for the last couple of months, is all the businesses that retrofitted what they're doing so they could create medical supplies. That's a perfect example of leverage. Utilize the manufacturing capabilities that you have, the staff that you have, and do something different, because you can't, it doesn't make sense to keep doing what you're doing right now. And so, I mean, we can give 1,000 different examples of it, but it's not about, sometimes it's about what's obvious. If you have a business and you have an half empty warehouse, can you be renting that out? I mean, it could be that simple. I need to create more money and I've got space, and somebody else needs space. But sometimes it is more creative. Sometimes it's, I have this idea and I need to break it down into all the things that need to be done. And then it's a matter of, okay, who do I know that can get me this part? Oh, I know I can get this over here. And you start really looking at what you can leverage to get all of those things in place. Can't hear you.
If I unmute myself, that might help. So first, shout out to Susan Shanklin. She's here. I know I've seen several people pop in and out here. So it's good to see you this morning, Friday morning, bright and early. For some of you, it is very early. For others, it's, mildly early, first cup of coffee early. So let's actually start walking through the asset inventory. And as Vinny mentioned earlier, there are 5 categories that we're going to go through. So if you've got, I don't care if it's an Excel spreadsheet or a piece of paper, but definitely get the idea of what the categories are. And as we're going through each of these, you might start creating a bit of a list. So make sure you've got some, pen and paper or Excel spreadsheet, something there, and start thinking this through. And if you're watching the replay, go ahead and make sure that you're playing along with us here, if you will. Start working on your own business this way. This is very, for CEOs, some CEOs, they like to just simply talk and what could we do if, and let everyone else do the work. The CEOs that Vinny and I tend to work with are the ones that say, okay, let's start working right now. Let's start digging in and start making progress right now so we can see it moving forward. Susan Shanklin says, best way to get the day started by watching the two of us. So it's awesome. Thanks, Susan.
Good to see you, or good to hear you, or whatever, Susan. To reconnecting.
That's right. So there's 5 categories. So let's go. What is the first category on the asset inventory list that we want to go through, Vinny?
I think that would be tangible in assets, because it's the most obvious. And I think we should, before we go into all of that, mention that there are internal and there are external assets. And internal ones that you have access to directly, external ones are ones that you can get access to. So an example of that would be, I need a meeting space. Oh, our church has a meeting space. We can use that. That's an external asset. Whereas an internal asset is, oh, we've got a boardroom down the hall. We can use that. It's ours. So it's external assets are things that you don't own. You may be able to get access to, but they're not immediately within your sphere. Right.
I can go do something with it.
Right.
Internal are things that you can make a decision right now. Yeah. Okay.
It could be, I know somebody who has that knowledge, or that person knows that person. They can introduce me to somebody who has that knowledge. So it's that third person kind of thing. So And you have to look at both, because if you're only looking internally, you're going to really be limiting yourself. So the first thing that is very obviously the tangible assets, and that is things that you have direct access to, and it could be personal, it could be business, it could be, you know, what do you have in your home? It's not a matter of counting every single piece of product that you have. You know, it's more like looking at it from a big picture. You know, I have 3 trucks, delivery trucks, that are sitting idle.
Mm-hmm.
What can we do with them? I have space in my warehouse. I have an empty storefront here. I have shelf space. What can we put on that? I have all this extra inventory that I need to be able to do something with, so I can bring in new inventory. What can I do with that? And, you know, how many businesses have we seen that have old inventories, stocks of stuff just sitting on the shelves that they're keeping it because they just don't know what to do with it, but it's money. It's money sitting there,
right,
that they're not leveraging. So, and the tangibles can be very small. It can be, I have a computer, I have a printer, I have, you know, this, whatever that is, a little bit of special equipment that somebody might need. But it can also be large. You know, like I said, I have a delivery truck, I have a warehouse. It doesn't, there are no limits to it. And it could be something that's very obvious, or it could be, we have a large backyard. What can we do with that? So it's going to sound tedious to be able to do that, to make that kind of an asset inventory, you know, that part of it. But immediately, when you start thinking about ideas, the first thing you can do is go to your asset inventory and say, okay, do I have what I need for this? Oh, I have this. I forgot about this. I have this. And that's kind of why you're doing this, is because anything you want to do, then you've got a list of the immediate things that you have access to, as well as things that you know you have access to if you just make a phone call, or, you know, it's within proximity or within your reach in some way or another. So
what strikes me about this is that a lot of people that I've worked with, business owners, CEOs, solopreneurs, one of the challenges that, and even Fortune 500 companies are this way, because a lot of them don't actually know what they have. Especially the bigger the company is, the less they know from department to department what they have. And so one of the things that I've seen is that when they don't know what assets they have, even especially in the tangible area, they will be like, well, we can't do that because it costs too much, or we can't do that because we don't have that thing, or we wouldn't know where to get it, or they don't even have the creative idea strike them of what they could do because they don't realize what they have it. And we've done this, like just looking at our asset inventory list, we said, oh, wait a second, we could do this, and this, bring them together and create this new thing, which we've never done before. And so like as an example, a lot of people, you know, in today's world are like, well, how do I create an extra income, or how do I create something of value? You know, maybe they don't know how to monetize it yet, how to generate revenue off it, but almost everyone today has a computer or a phone. And with the computer or a phone, you've got a microphone, you've got software packages you have access to, either free or minimal cost. You have a camera, which means you can start recording content. You can get free access to Facebook. We are doing this show live. I mean, okay, let's look at our asset inventory. Vinny and I have a whole lot of knowledge. We've worked with a whole lot of people, so we've got a lot of experience. We've got a book that we wrote 4 years ago that has some great stuff in it. There's people out there, I mean, another form of an asset, we'll talk about this a little more later, but like there are people out there that need this information. That's an asset, you know, that we can leverage. Facebook allows us to do these lives for free. I've got thousands of people that I'm connected to. Vinny's got thousands of people he's connected to. So there we go, right? So it's just, that's just an example of like, when we have the list in front of us, we can start to be more creative. But without the list, there's a barrier for us to even take the step forward to be creative, because it's like, I don't know if I have anything that I can do.
Awesome. A lot of times it just becomes overwhelming when you think of, this is what I'd love to do, and you don't actually have this list to look at. it can be overwhelming. You just dismiss it because I'll never be able to do that. I'll never be able to write a book. Well, if you know somebody who's an author and can walk you through the process because you already have the knowledge, then you can write a book. It doesn't have to be complicated,
Right.
but it doesn't have to be only what you have and what you have absolute access to right now, or the knowledge, the skills that you have. You can go way beyond that if you just leverage the other pieces that are around you.
And so if you think we're crazy for a second, let me give you a couple examples of businesses that are built on this whole idea of the tangible assets that you have available in your asset inventory. Have anyone heard of Airbnb? Right? Do you have a spare bedroom that you can rent out? Right? We have a good friend actually that owns several homes and rents them out via Airbnb. Right? So Airbnb is completely built off of excess tangible assets. Uber, I have a car. I'm not using it for my own personal purposes. Maybe I want to earn some extra money by driving people. We call it the gig economy to some extent, right? But essentially, Uber is a version, or Lyft, whichever you prefer. That's a version of using a tangible asset to generate a new form of revenue for you. So those are just two really simple examples, but there are plenty of others out there. And they'll continue to grow because this whole idea of the shared economy, some people call it that, the shared economy where we share resources, it's going to continue to grow. It could be as simple as, in tight times, if you've got a second bedroom and you have the ability to sublet or to co-sign a rental agreement with someone, maybe you bring in, a roommate in. Now you say, well, that's not, I'm a small business owner. Maybe I don't, that's not related to my business, but it helps your personal cash flow, which may allow you to have a little bit more room in your business to do something, to move something forward. Let's say you could save a few $100s in rent a month. What can that do in your business to add to your marketing budget? If you could take it, okay, I don't have to pay myself an extra $300 this month. I can put that toward marketing. That's $10 a day that you can do a whole lot with on Facebook or LinkedIn or some Google ads or whatever else. So just an example, you got to start thinking about these things a little more creatively. So, okay, so that was tangible assets, the stuff that you can see, touch, do something with, move around your office, your space. So what's the next one, Vinny?
I would say that would be intangible assets. Well,
Okay.
actually, I think we should go to relationships first, because the tangible assets are important, and it's great to know what to do with that. But a lot of times it's leveraging the relationships that you have that are going to be able to really let you capitalize on those tangible assets. And relationships can sound, it sounds like it's such a vague thing, and in a way it is, but it can be a lifesaver. When you start listing out, so it's not just, okay, I've got 3 cousins and I've got, this person, and, here I've got my boss and I've got my best friend and everything. It is, what groups am I connected to? Who do I know from church, or who do I have access to from church, or from, Kiwanis or Rotary, or because I belong to the PTA,
Right.
or I graduated college and there's an alumni association. What relationships do you have access to? And most people don't even think about it. Don't think about going to their alumni association to find a mentor. Don't think about looking at, well, we have an entrepreneur center here in Nashville that's world renowned. You can join that for very little money and get access to, not only training, but investors, the whole 9 yards, everything that you need to grow your business. So relationships are key. And if you don't know somebody who's exactly the person that you need to know, you probably know somebody who would know them. To be able to go to a successful business owner and say, who do you know that would be a good coach for me in this area? How many people do you actually know from your Chamber of Commerce, if you belong to that? It's probably a very, very rich environment with people
Right.
who are there to support each other and want to help each other. But people don't tap into it. Instead, it's all about who do I absolutely trust right now? And I don't have any money. I can't afford to bring in a coach. Well, guess what? I just did an amazing thing. I have one client that I was coaching, and it wasn't a whole lot of money. $350 a month for a couple of calls. And he called me up and he said, my wife is out of her job right now. I can't afford it for the coaching for a couple of months. And I said, well, nowadays people are bartering a lot. People this is a barter economy, and it's a leverage economy. I use that word. I said, so, think about that. If money's getting tight, think about that. And he said, well, the only thing that I have to leverage is a riding lawnmower. I said, guess what? We've been looking for a riding lawnmower. So I bartered for 3 months of coaching for this great riding lawnmower. So it's not, sometimes you don't even think about it, but when you're talking to somebody else, it's like, what do you need? Maybe I can help you and you can help me. That's a form of utilizing your relationships. It didn't cost either of us any money. He had actually bought a house and it came with this riding lawnmower, but the house didn't need a riding lawnmower. So he had this.
It's interesting because, as an example, and quick shout out here. Hey, Patricia, good to see you here. And by the way, if anyone has questions, you wondering about your asset inventory, you're wondering about, okay, how do I kind of go down this path? Throw them up here in the chat. I'm watching that and monitoring that as we go. So we'll get to your question. And if we don't get to your question for some reason, we'll reach out to you afterwards and we'll get back to you. If you're watching the replay, drop your questions in here because I'll be monitoring this as we go forward so we can answer additional questions. And it might end up that we answer your question on a future show as well, because we're going to be doing this every Friday morning. So an example for me that stands out, I just recently launched a podcast. It's called the Really Know Your Customer podcast, right? Shameless plug right here. It's on all major platforms. But the reason I mention it is this. The podcast is essentially built all on relationships. I'm co-host of the podcast. My co-author, Betsy Westhaver, she helped me write the book Profitability back there in the background. And she came to me and said in January, she's like, I would love to do a podcast with you. And so there was an investment on the front end of doing, the production, all that kind of stuff. But she said, I want you to be on the podcast with me because you bring such value to the conversations. And in that process, we start saying, okay, well, who do we want to have on our podcast? And we start looking through our networks of the C-level executives, CEOs, and C-suite officers and saying, well, let's invite them onto the show. And of course, because we had good relations with them, the first couple were like, absolutely, I'd love to jump on your show, right? It was kind of a give back. But then also for them, now they're on a podcast and they're like, oh, that's cool. I'm on a podcast. So they start sharing it out there and their network gets excited because someone they know was on a podcast. So it's just like relationship to build the podcast, relationships to create the shows, the podcasts. And then kind of another level, I just reach out, you just mentioned the Alumni Association. I just reached out to our Alumni Association from the college I went to and shared it with them and said, hey, by the way, if you want to put this in your weekly newsletter, here's the podcast I just launched. Hey, Malin, good to see you here. Thanks for joining us. And so the podcast is really relationship upon relationship upon relationship. So I just keep leveraging it. And every single day there's like, oh, I haven't reached out to this person or told this person about it, or I haven't shared it with this person. And not in a salesy way, but like, I know they could benefit from the value, the topics we talk about on that podcast. Or I know maybe inviting them in. I've got a gentleman who will be recording soon here, that he's the chairman of a very fast growing technology company. And I knew him like when their company was literally a startup and it's grown and grown and grown. It's a great company, great culture and all that. And so we're having him on the show. He said, absolutely, I'd love to be on your podcast. So it's those relationships that it may be years between connecting with people, but if there's value for them, they'll definitely jump on board.
You're absolutely right about that. It's sometimes we don't see the value. They see the value. So it's, you can't not tell somebody because you don't, or not share something because you don't know whether or not they are going to see the value because you don't know who they know.
Right.
I shared one of the things that we're doing, that you and I are doing right now. I don't know if we want to go into the conference software and stuff.
We'll take that another day.
But I shared it with a marketing person yesterday who immediately shared it with somebody else, and they got back to me and said, yeah, we're interested in that. I didn't do it for that reason, but you let your relationships know what you're doing, and what you need, you can just put it out there. Everybody's heard, you just put it out there, put it out for the universe and everything. That there's absolute truth in that, because people want to inherently, they want to help other people. And if they can, if somebody that they may have a relationship that you have no idea that they actually knew, but they can bring them to the table for you. So
if they know, like, and trust you, they're going to want to come to the table to help you out, because to them, it makes them feel better. They're like, hey, I did a good thing for someone today.
That's right. Absolutely. So, I mean, your podcast is a perfect example, but it happens with customers. It happens with employees. I mean, you leverage the employees that you have to find other people that they trust. So why not do that when things are down, and look at the network that you have and the network you have access to, and say, well, if I know this group here, what do I have that would work for them that they might maybe love? I mean,
so
there's a lot of ways to look at it.
Let's go through, let's get 5 really tactical questions that people can ask themselves to start developing the relationship part of the asset and inventory list. What's one question that you would start with? Where would you start this?
Who's in my phone that I would call on a daily, I could call and be very comfortable with. Just look through your database, look through your address book.
Okay. I go to my LinkedIn list and say, who do I know? Like, it's the moment someone asks me, do you know anyone I go to my LinkedIn list. So that's another, like, your phone, then your LinkedIn list. Okay. What else?
What civic clubs or what organizations do I belong to?
Okay. That could be church. That could be the chamber. That could be
Rotary,
Kiwanis, as you mentioned, Rotary.
Absolutely. Yep. Or the PTA. It doesn't have to be business related. That's important. It doesn't have to be business related. It could be, we have a group of parents that get together at the playground while the kids are playing. Why not tell them what you're doing? Because you don't know who knows who. Right. We live in Nashville, and I'm in, very much in the music industry as well as film, TV, and business and everything else. But, the one thing I know about Nashville is that anybody that you talk to, anybody knows somebody in the music industry.
Oh, yeah.
And, I tell people, I tell artists especially, your goal is to earn the trust of just a few influencers who are willing to open the door for you. That's the way you're going to make things happen. And it's no different anywhere else. You have influencers in your life, and they don't, for the music industry, it doesn't have to be somebody who's in the business. It could be somebody whose brother is in the business or whose neighbor is in the business, but they are an influencer to the person that you need. So it's the same thing in business. Don't discount people. I mean, you can narrow it down. There's a good chance this person would know, or this person, this group would somebody in that group would be able to do this.
Right.
But don't discount it. Don't make it, it's got to be business.
Right. And I would say on the business side, even though it doesn't have to be business, one of the things I have looked for more recently is like going to clients, existing clients, saying, hey, this is what I'm working on. Do you know? Or sometimes because I work closely with them, I know that they have particular contacts, and I'll share what I'm doing with them and ask them if they thought it was appropriate. And, a lot of times they're like, you know what? I'm more than happy to make that introduction for you. Now, it may not go anywhere, but, it's not like I'm trying to pull one over on them. I'm very transparent and very, this is what I'm working on. This is what I'm trying to accomplish. Do you know someone? Who do you know that could help me do that? Or I saw that you're connected to so-and-so. Do you think you would be willing to arrange a meeting there? And the beautiful thing is when you start looking at the relationship asset inventory, you can start to see there's connections. Like, so we've gone through 4 of them. I'm going to tie a couple of these together. Go through your phone, go through your LinkedIn. I said clients, you said civic organizations and things like that, right? So I'll just give you an example. I've got a good friend of mine. His name is David Norris. He often pops in. I haven't seen him pop in today, but when I'm live, he pops in here a lot. I've had him on some of my Facebook Lives. The guy's brilliant. He's a leadership mentor and coach and all of that, and he worked in the banking industry for years. So the reason I bring him up is he also, I know in his asset inventory, if he were to run it, he's a former Rotarian. I don't think he's active right now, but he was at the top levels. And so he knows Rotarians from all over the country, and he's willing to pick up the phone or send an email to introduce me to any of them because he trusts me, knows me, likes me. And anyone that he has a relationship with, he would be willing to pick up the phone and say, hey, could you give Tony 5 minutes? Or, Tony's going to send you an email. I think he's a really great guy. Here's what he's going to email you about, right? And so as you begin to develop your asset inventory list, you start thinking about, okay, what's in their asset inventory list? What relationships do they have? Because if I know them, they might be the 1 degree separation or 2 degrees of separation from who I need. So, okay, so we've got, I've drawn a blank here, phone, your LinkedIn list. We've got the civic organizations. We've got customers or clients. What's another tactical way to generate ideas for this relationship asset inventory list?
Well, I think a lot of people, they know about other people who have the same challenges or are in the same business. Okay. So in the same way that somebody would form a neighborhood, watch party or something like that, you can do the same thing. I want to get all the restaurant owners together. I want to, there's a new organization in the country. It's NEVA. It's the National Independent Venues Association. That's what it is. Independent, and it's for bars and clubs and stuff that have been affected by the virus, because they're having huge challenges. So somebody got the great idea to bring them all together and get them to network with each other and help each other, come up with solutions to be able to lobby together, to be, just do the things that one person wouldn't be able to do. So they were able to leverage the knowledge of that that there are other people that have the same challenge. So that's always
people in a similar situation and who might be like me, if you will.
Yep.
Okay, that's a good idea. Okay, so let's move on. So we've gone through the tangible assets and the relationships. Those are 2 of the 5 that we want to go through today. What would you put as number 3? What's the third asset inventory list you'd have people develop?
I think it's intellectual property.
Okay.
And if we describe intellectual property, it's any writings, pictures, photographs, any kind of content, let's say, to start with, that you might have developed over the years or that you are developing right now. And sometimes it's a matter of what can I create? And sometimes it's a matter of what have I created that I could repackage? And just like, my book, my first book that I put out back in, 2007, somewhere around there, was CEO Secrets. And I had been writing articles, for entrepreneurial articles, for about 2 years in a weekly newsletter. And people kept saying, I keep copying, because this is 2007. So I print them out and I keep them in a binder. You need to put a book together. So I put a book together. It probably took maybe a week to organize it and to, make sure that there was a sequence to it, that it made sense. And voila, I had a book, and I didn't have to write one word. It was already done. It just wasn't in that form. So I think that when people start really looking at what have I developed from a something that could be copyrighted, something that could be trademarked, and trademarks are a huge thing. That's intellectual property. Patents, things that are patentable, or patents that you have, or it's whether you've actually patented or not. If you've developed something that should be protected, that's intellectual property. Songs, poems, blogs, things that you put on your website, pictures,
Facebook Lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Are we going to leverage this?
Well, it's funny because I was thinking, you talking about CEO Secrets, your book. Well, we named this whole series we're doing every Friday morning as CEO Secrets because, as we're kind of going through the ideas of what would this be like. Well, there's so much content that comes, not just from your book, and it's 13 years since you published that book, but the ideas are still relevant, and in a way they have to be repackaged or or rethought for today's environment, which is what we're doing here. Like I said, every Friday morning. Hey, Jeff Brody, good to see you here. That Jeff Brody is a CEO actually out of Canada, and I had a really good conversation with him yesterday. He's a great guy. But so when we look at CEO Secrets, you've got the book, which came out of the blog, which now has turned into this, Friday morning show that we're doing. On top of that, we're going to take these recordings and put them into pinstripe.tv, which is one of our platforms that we co-created. So it's like we're finding ways to continue to leverage. A lot of times what I find with creatives is they keep going out there and creating more content. And it's because that's kind of their happy place. I know, because I'm a creative of sorts. I'm not a musician, I'm not an artist, but when it comes to data and content creation, that's where I shine. And what I've learned is that I spend more time creating a really solid piece of content now than ever before. So it's more about like the quality. I got through the quantity phase, get the quality. But now it's about leveraging that content in all the different ways possible. So taking that thing, and I think it's important for us to step back and look at what do we have as intellectual property? How can we leverage that again and again and again, and use it in different ways? Because people might be visually oriented and want to watch a video. People might be auditory and want to hear it as a podcast. People might be readers and they want to consume it through reading and that. So it's while as the creator you might be bored with it, by the time you're bored, your audience is just starting to pick it up. So that's kind of a content perspective. So tell us more. What else in relation to the intellectual property should people be aware of or be thinking about what to put on their list?
Well, I think that anytime that you create something, being able to archive it is a huge thing, and having a place where you keep it so that you can go back to it at any given time. I use a Google Drive and it's full of content. It's got so much content, articles I've written. I mean, I've tried to compile all of it to put it together. And so what I find is that some people, and this, some like famous authors and everything, they're taking the same content and repackaging it over and over and over and over again. They're leveraging what they created once.
Right.
And they're speaking about it. They're writing a new book about it, takes one aspect of it, and dwells on it. And so there's a lot of ways to look at repurposing content. And it doesn't have to be that you're going to sell it. It could just be, what, I need an article for my newsletter. Let me take this article I wrote 5 years ago because I don't have time to go write something new, but this is still relevant. Mm-hmm. It could be instead of an article, I'm going to put a meme. Take a meme that I put on Instagram or something. Anything that you create for social media is definitely intellectual property. If you just like to write poems and stuff, that's intellectual property. You can get more formal things that you've trademarked, names that you have for your business. Things
URLs as an example would be another form of intellectual property.
Yeah. Oh, a URL is huge.
Yeah.
Because there are people that have really valuable URLs and they're not really doing a whole lot with it. They don't realize how valuable it is. Mm-hmm. And I know because I'm out there searching for URLs for our businesses. And it's like, why? How did they get that? They must have bought it 15 years ago before URLs were actually considered intellectual property that had value to them. Mm-hmm. So, I've been told that my company, Indie Connect, that name has a lot of value. That's great. I'm not giving it up, but it's, you don't think about things like that. All the things that you create for social media are definitely intellectual property that can be leveraged. And then also think about who else would need what you've got, or who else has intellectual property that you can leverage by taking theirs, not taking it, by getting permission.
Yeah. Or just simply linking to it. That you could link to. So, it's interesting. A couple ideas come to mind here as I'm thinking about this, like how would I practically apply this, and how you and I have applied this. So from one perspective, especially if you're in business and you're thinking about, okay, how do I impact my customers? How do I impact my clients? The asset inventory list around intellectual property and specifically around content, which let's say videos or audios or articles or blog posts, whatever else. Like, what I love to do with those is and I don't write as much on LinkedIn because they've changed the algorithms, but like when LinkedIn was really promoting their own article content, I would go out there and I would actually write an article, and in there I would have link away to this. It would be a related article I had written or a related LinkedIn, article or on my blog or something else. I would do that 2 or 3 times within the article where it was relevant. I may put in a video, it may be mine, it may be someone else's, but I would link to a YouTube video in there because there's always ways to enhance the content that I was writing or to back up the content I was writing with my other stuff I created or other people's content, which would kind of give them props and throw it back to them. So by doing that, I would get hundreds or thousands of people reading those articles, and people are like, this is really great content. And it's because if you think about it, a lot of people write a blog or write a post as kind of this standalone momentary thing. Like, I'm going to write a post about what I'm eating right now, right? Okay, maybe not much value in that. But if you start to think about even your personal post, if you start to think about it as really this can be a building block in something bigger. As an example, like I made a decision that, years ago, I opened up my Facebook so that people, business people could connect. We're doing this on my personal Facebook page rather than a business Facebook page. And I've got business people that connect with me now, right? And so, but I also post about my family. And so I've got people that actually follow me, and the only thing that they ever comment on or like are posts where I'm sharing stories, funny stories about what my daughter said or did, or how they kind of pulled a fast one on me, right? And so part of my brand is being authentic and straightforward. And so the content that I create for social media, even if it's a post about my kids, in some sense has value because it's building a relationship with people because they feel like they know me better. So that's an example. And so when you have this asset inventory list, and we've done this before, like putting together all of the different pieces of content we've created in a particular area, we can then link to it, or we can say, oh, let's pull that one out. We need to give that one to this person over here. We link it all together. So it becomes almost like this universe of content where people can get lost within it, but in a sense, gain so much value from it. That like, these guys are great. They've got stuff that covers every question I have here. And I can link from one to the next, to the next, to the next, So we start thinking about it that way. It's like this universe of wonderful content.
I want to mention one other thing too. A lot of people have, and this kind of goes into the next category at the same time of intangible assets, but a lot of people have like somebody who cooks a lot and has a whole bunch of recipes that, they're not, you wouldn't call them, intellectual property because they're all in their head. They just, but you write them down and all of a sudden you can have a cookbook or a very popular website that has new recipes.
Right.
So what are you creating in your head? What are you thinking? What are you doing that could turn into intellectual property? That's another way to approach that subject.
Yeah, that's a really good one, because all of us every day, literally, we're creating intellectual property with all of our thoughts, right?
We're doing it right now.
Exactly. And so how do you capture that, organize it, leverage it, use it out there in the world so other people can get value out of it too? Absolutely.
Right.
Awesome. Well, let's move on to the next category, which was
intangibles.
Intangibles. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And intangibles, I mean, what we just talked about as far as the knowledge that you have, the skills that you have, the education that you have, the reputation that you have, these are all intangibles that can be leveraged. And I mean, whether you're a doctor and you're leveraging the knowledge that you have about medicine to be able to make a living, to be able to take care of patients, that's the formal way of doing it. But the person who is a great cook and has these great recipes, that's an informal way of doing it. It's knowledge that they have. Coaching somebody, You know, if you're an expert at what you're doing just from having done it, not because you studied it. I never graduated college. I just studied business, and I have an intuition about business that seems to work. It seems to people like the way I think about it. So I'm leveraging that. I've leveraged that to coach over 1,000 businesses and over 1,000 artists. So it doesn't have to be formal, but it is a form of intangible asset that I have. Our reputations are huge. You know, what can you do because people trust you? Mm-hmm. What can you do because you're an influencer? That is a great intellectual or intangible asset. The fact that you're an influencer, the fact that somebody might pay you to promote their product, or that you have, you know, there's a great idea that you can put forward and get the world talking about it. You know, whatever that is. I mean, teens now are leveraging that to no end with product placements and stuff like that. There's teens that are, you know, 12-year-olds that are making millions of dollars, leveraging the fact that they were cool on social media.
Or that they could play video games and they had their
That's right.
YouTube or something else to put it out there so people could see it, watch them play video games. I mean,
and that's an absolute perfect example of an intangible asset. I'm good at this and I'm going to let the world see it.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's probably the most vague of all of these when you start saying, well, how do I find my intangible assets?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it's got to be, what do I know? What do I love? What am I good at? And then the reputation part to me is so key, because a lot of people don't realize the reputation that they do have. You just said people trust you and follow you because they see a part of you besides the business. They trust you because they see a family man who loves his daughters. That's a reputation. You could write a book about relationships, you know, maintaining your family life while you're building a business.
Yeah.
Because you have that reputation of doing that.
Yeah.
And so if you really think about, what am I known for? What do people love about me? Why do people trust me? What do people come to me for advice for? These are all intangible assets. You know, what do I know that other people should know? How do I do things that other people should know about?
You know, it's interesting. I'm going to kind of go down a tangent here for a moment, because I've been teaching my daughters this and trying to help them understand this. And I wish we would teach this in schools, because this is so important for people to understand. So intangible asset, one of my daughters, she's 14. She has a natural talent for art, right? And she loves photography. She also has a very like an eye for photography. She has not been formally trained other than maybe a couple classes in school, right? So it's not like we haven't taken her to any special mentor, coach, or anything like that to be trained in these areas. But she sat down last year and she did this beautiful picture, and you can actually see it on my page if you're on my page, of she called it cherry blossoms, right? It was a cherry blossom tree. And we found out that there was a contest at the Frist Art Museum, and not really a contest, but like they were asking for submissions from teen artists in the area, 3-4 county area here. And so she submitted it, and her piece of art was accepted as one that will be on display. And it's going to unfortunately be only a digital display. I say unfortunately because it'd be cool to see it in the museum itself, right? But it's going to be a digital display because they don't have the museum open yet. But it's going to be from July through September. And so the intangible asset is the talent she has and her willingness to apply that talent in a disciplined way to create a picture, right? Those are all different types. If you think about those, I just went through about 3 different types of intangible assets: talent, willingness, and discipline, right? And she created this piece of art, and then it's just been sitting in her portfolio. Haven't done anything with it. She takes a picture, posts it on Instagram, whatever else, that kind of thing. But then she has this opportunity to submit it. So she goes and she literally, it was like an asset inventory list. She looked through, she's like, I'm not going to create a new one. Let me look and see what I have. She looks through her portfolio, pulls out this one piece, submits it. Now she's going to be displayed at the Frist, art museum, at least the digital version of it. And so that's something now she just created with that intangible asset that became a tangible intellectual property, if you will, the picture itself. Now she's earned a new level of reputation, which means, as a teen, I was displayed in the Frist Art Museum, which could help her on college applications or whatever else, depending on what she does, right? But then I was pointing out to her, said, now you've got this picture that's been displayed in, for the Frist Center. So think about it, that picture, that original, is now more valuable because of where it's being put, where it's being displayed. Now you can do prints of that, like you could get it professionally scanned or whatever else. You could do prints of that. You could have it other people print it online. So we're just kind of playing with this whole idea of drawing this one picture one afternoon has like literally ripple effect of that and what that could mean. And so I use that as an example because there are so many intangibles that we can leverage and turn into revenue. And now you might be saying, well, Tony, that's your kid. Well, yeah, but CEOs have to be thinking exactly the same way. CEOs have to be thinking about, what is it that my employees have? What skills do they have that we can leverage? What reputation do they have that we can leverage? Your sales team, if they have a good reputation with your customers, then you ought to be out there leveraging that reputation right now. If your customer support team has a good reputation, you ought to be out there. If you've got 5-star reviews online, you ought to be out there leveraging those. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation about how to use all of this social proof, as I would call it, in the customer experience world and marketing world. How do you leverage all of those intangibles to improve your brand and to sell more? So, okay, so that's intangible assets. Do you have anything else to add there, Vinny?
Only that it's absolutely unlimited. And so it could be a matter of something that really, really simple that you do that has value. I mean, you may not think about the fact that, she draws, and that's great. And she could probably mentor some other kids, and not everything has to turn into money.
Exactly.
Number one, you can leverage intangible assets to develop a better reputation, to develop, to exchange for, like my intangible asset of coaching, in exchange for getting a riding lawnmower that I wanted. So you can barter with it. And all of these things are this way. I mean, they're not necessarily all going to translate into money. They can just translate into something else that has value for you and value for them.
Right.
And so don't think it has to be something that's formal. It doesn't have to be something that's formal. Your intangibles are everywhere, everything, just something that you think, something that you write on a Facebook page, on a Facebook post or Instagram that gets some attention, now becomes something that you can do something with. So
I like a point you're making there. And so, we've been talking about revenue, we're kind of relating it from that perspective, but honestly, this is about creating value. And there's a difference. Revenue and value now is the same thing. Revenue is a way of harvesting, making sales as a way of harvesting value. But honestly, if you look at it from a perspective of how can I create value for people? Now, you may harvest that value by asking for a favor, by bartering, by connecting with someone that you don't know, having someone connect you with someone you don't know, or by selling something. So value can be harvested in a lot of different ways. The idea here is, with your asset inventory list, you are now able to see how you can create greater value for more people. And then deciding how you harvest that, whether that's monetization or something else, you can decide that in the future.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
And it becomes, one thing blossoms into the next. It just leads to the next, and it grows and it grows and it grows. So don't discount anything that you know, anything that you're good at. Even if I'm good at helping people, great, go volunteer somewhere, or offer to help, offer to mentor somebody or teach somebody, because it will come back to you.
Yeah.
You're creating value for somebody else, and it will come back to you. No different than creating value for a customer and then having them go talk to somebody else and recommend you.
Absolutely. Okay, Vinny, what is the fifth asset inventory that we want people to focus on?
It is ideas. And
I love this one.
well, this runs a huge gamut, because it could be, I mean, you and I are the kind of people, I mean, my wife tells me she hates it when I go in the shower because I always come out with a new business idea. But I'm a creative. You're a creative, and which is why we own lots of businesses and have started lots of businesses. But it doesn't have to be that dramatic. It doesn't have to be that. I have an idea to write a book. I have an idea for a new recipe. I have an idea to start this club. I have an idea. I mean, anything that you've got, whether you've actually put it into practice or it's something you just would love to do. I have an idea of getting a house on the lake that we can go to on the weekends.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so how do I make that happen? I leverage these other contacts that I have of people who would love to go to the lake and go there on the weekends that we're not there. I mean, you can, but ideas can be leveraged even in their rawest form. So we're out right now looking for TV show ideas. I co-own 3 TV channels. You are co-owner of one of those channels with me. And so we're out creating content right now. We're looking for shows that we can develop, as well as content that's already leveraged, that's already done, that we can leverage. But somebody comes to us with a good TV show idea, they are going to be the executive producer. They're going to make a little bit of money on the back end, just because they had the idea. They don't have to do anything else but to get that to us if it's something we use. And it's unique enough that not 50 people are pitching us the same idea.
Right.
Why don't you do a show about businesses? No, that's not going to work.
Sure. Okay.
But I mean, it's exactly the whole idea behind ideas have value to them.
Right.
And it could be an idea that you have for yourself. It could be an idea that you have for somebody else. To be able to say, why don't you try this? And all of a sudden it generates money and they give you a little bit of money on the back end. It's a very vague thing when you say ideas, but it could be an idea for a product, could be an idea for a service, could be an idea for a fun thing, a game. How many people have invented games? How many people have done just taking pictures and, have an idea to put a book together about pictures of butterflies or whatever.
Right.
And maybe you don't do it, but you mention it to somebody else. You love to take pictures. Why don't you put a book together about this? And they're off and running.
And I would say that I think one of the most valuable things, again, as you develop out these 5, and I'm going to list out here just so people, because we got new people coming in. Chris Foley just jumped on. Chris. I know Chris. Good to see you here, Chris. So just to go back through the 5 asset inventories that we're talking about, the first one is tangible. The second one is, what would you say, relationships. The third one is intellectual property. The fourth one's intangible. And the fifth one is ideas. Now, I'm going to come back to the idea one here and link it with some of the other ones for people that are just joining us or have come on late. With ideas, I'm going to point back here, okay? So you can see, well, I'll just grab it. This here's an example, profitability. Brand new cover, but we published the book 2 years ago. My co-author, Betsy, and I. Vinny, I don't have a copy of our book because it's only a digital. It's a Kindle version. Our book, Leverage, Achieve a Lot with the Little You've Got, where we actually talk about this idea in more depth about the asset inventory list. It's on Amazon. I would turn my phone around and put it up there if I could, but my phone's busy with Facebook right now. And but that was a series of ideas that Betsy and I put together. Leverage was a series of ideas that you and I put together. The big white thing back there that you see, that's the Brave Leadership Mastery. It's actually a daily journal for 90 days. Comes out of one of my courses that I actually teach at Vanderbilt University once a year for the people that are moving into leadership roles there. And so I had been, doing something and created a little one that I was printing at Kinko's. I was like, well, other people might need this. And so I took that, had this idea, and I took it and created a template for it and put it on Amazon so people can buy that on Amazon now. These are all just, I mean, you and I, as you said, we have tons of ideas. And so part of it is like the asset inventory with the ideas is great. It's awesome to have that asset inventory list for ideas. And then you look to your relationships. You say, how can I take one of these ideas and move it forward and turn it into something else, which is what those books represent, which is why I've got them back here. But, you know, it's like I've got other books and other courses, and you and I have got all kinds of stuff we've done together, because it's about taking those ideas when the time's right with the right partners and going forward. That's what really makes a difference.
I agree 100%. And you just said one of the key things, and that is when the time is right. You know, I love the fact that in the songwriting world, one of the things that we teach songwriters is you keep a journal. If you get a great idea for a title, if you get a great idea for a hook, if you get a great idea for this is what a song we should write a song about, you keep that journal. You may never do anything with it until you actually are sitting down with somebody else co-writing, and you're going through your idea asset inventory, and you say, well, what did you have in mind for that? Well, I thought about this. Let's write that. And that's the way the process works. You don't go in there with one idea. In fact, you'll get shot if you do that. Nobody will want to work with you because you're too narrow. It's too narrow. You go in, you start talking about stuff. A lot of times with a songwriting session, you're talking for 20 minutes, a half hour, even an hour before you actually get down to the writing part, because it's the ideas that are flowing. And until you find the one where the timing is right for us to talk about or write about this one.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the idea behind an idea asset inventory is that all of these things may not have value right now, but it may down the road. You may come back to that when you're stuck. You may come back to that when I know I wrote something about this and I need it now. There is no, you know, this is the one place where there's absolutely no limits. You could sit here and literally in hours just keep writing ideas, you know, and for some people have a little bit more trouble, and that's why it's really important to have it written down, because they can't be spontaneous about it. But I mean, how many times have we come up with an idea for a product or something like that? You know, if somebody were to do this with that product, it would be a lot better. And then somebody comes out with it. Well, what happened is two people had the same idea and one took advantage of it.
Yeah.
So, you know, this whole process of going through all these this whole asset inventory is not, each of these is not separate and segregated from the others. You know, it's like, I've got this idea. I've got this tangible asset that would help with that. Where can I find the contacts that would know how to do? Oh, these people know how to do that. And then, oh, I've got this intellectual property that fits right in with that. And then all of a sudden, something that would have been totally out of reach for you is very much in reach, because you were able to go through your list and say, oh, I needed that. No problem. That's where I can get that. I needed that. I already have that. I forgot about that. And how many times, you know, you try to do something and say, well, what, don't you have this over here? Oh yeah, totally forgot about that. If you have the list, then you don't have that challenge.
Absolutely. So as we've gone through, we've got the 5 asset inventory lists. Now they're giving people ideas of what to put on each of those lists. A tip that I'm going to give, and then if you've got any tips, Vinny, for how to do this, is I know people get overwhelmed a lot of times when they start looking at this. The first thing is, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming to me, and they shut down. And so what I'm going to recommend is that you get a notebook, and you don't have to do this any fancy way. You get a notebook or a journal, or if you like Excel, use Excel or Google Sheets, whatever else. Doesn't really matter what it is. But I would say block time, and I'm going to suggest 15 or 30 minutes every day. Usually, if you're a morning person, like if you do your best creative thinking in the morning, then do it in the morning, 15 to 30 minutes right away in the morning. Or if you're more creative at night, then do 15 or 30 minutes and block it on your calendar right now. And for the next 5 days, every day at the same time, block it and go in there 15 or 30 minutes and just start listing the different things. You could take one asset inventory list today. We've got 5 of them, right? So you could say, okay, today I'm going to list out my tangible things and just write. You don't have to have it all complete. Right now is the idea is to get your mind flowing in that direction. So 15 to 30 minutes a day, one asset inventory per day. Just start listing out what you come up with. And you can repeat this exercise basically 5 days a week if you want to, or you can do it every day if you want to, and just keep adding to your list as you go. In the Brave Leadership Mastery Journal, one of the things I have is at the end of the day, I have ideas that you came up with. So it's kind of this ideas element of it. I have successes and things like that. So different type of inventory, but those are things that I try to train people to do that, to make lists so they can go back and see it later. So Vinny, what would be a tip you'd give people to make it easier for them to move through this and to take advantage of it?
I agree with what you're saying. Breaking it down into small steps is huge. On the relationship side, if you have ever been in a sales position or done multi-level marketing or anything, you know that there are lists of, and there's a million of them online, of referral sheets. So who do you know because you own a home? Who do you know because you have kids? Who do you know because you have a pet? Who's your dentist? Who's your doctor? And it's a real easy way to just put together a relationship list that's, very generic at times, oh, I have the PTA. Doesn't have to be every single person in there, but it really helps because that is your they call it a memory jogger. That's what I couldn't think of it. It's called a memory jogger. And it's designed for exactly that. So that's a tip.
Cool. Well, I hope this has been helpful for everyone. Again, CEO Secrets. If you want to know more about the asset inventory list, Vinny and I wrote about it in depth in our book, Leverage. Achieve a lot with the little you've got, appropriately named for the time that we're in, because everyone thinks that we don't have enough. And a lot of us have cut back on our resources for probably not by choice. I'll say it that way. So the book is available on Amazon if you want to get it there. And if you want to check out Vinny's CEO Secrets, I know you need to do another printing. I'm not even sure. There might be some used copies available out there on Amazon.
There's a few. Yeah.
There's a few out there. And but give us your feedback. Give us your thoughts, questions you have. We're going to be here every Friday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. Would love to get your feedback. And if you're watching this as a replay, go ahead, drop your comments in there as well. Any final words from you, Vinny?
I think that the one thing we did not cover in all of this, and it's in the asset inventory itself, and it's written in the book, is the way you leverage this is when you have a project, you have something that you need to do, you can literally you map out the steps, and then what are the 3 people, the 3 contacts, what the 3 things that I need to do that, and then you get to the next steps and everything, and you break whatever big chunk business idea or whatever the idea is, whatever that is, you break it into a lot smaller steps, and then you start going to your asset inventory and you fill in these blanks, and all of a sudden you see how what you wanted to do that looks so daunting is actually very doable because you actually have access to, or know how to get access to, every single piece that you need.
Awesome. Well, with that, we will wrap. If you are interested in chatting with Vinny or myself, you can definitely reach us on Facebook or LinkedIn. And I think that would be it.
Sounds awesome. Good. Thank you, Tony. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
We'll see you all next week.
See you guys next week. Thanks a lot, Vinny.